Before accompanying him to the White House, European leaders reiterated the need for a united front ahead of a meeting between Trump and Zelensky.
At least 7 people were killed and more than a dozen injured after Russia struck Kharkiv overnight into Monday, just hours before a heavily anticipated Trump-Zelensky meeting. Deadly wildfires have so far burned an area exceeding 3,400 kilometers in the north of Spain as Madrid continues to battle 12 active blazes in Galicia.
During a trip to Japan, Germany's foreign minister criticized China for its aggressive behavior in the Taiwan Strait, as well as its support for Russia.
Before accompanying him to the White House, European leaders reiterated the need for a united front ahead of a landmark meeting between US President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Addressing journalists on the eve of the summit, French President Emmanuel Macron said showing weakness today in front of Russia would lay the ground for future conflicts.
Bonsoir, il ne peut pas y avoir de discussion territoriale concernant l'Ukraine sans les responsables légitimes démocratiquement élus de l'Ukraine. Pas de discussion sur l'Ukraine sans les Ukrainiens. Mais de la même manière, pas de discussion sur la sécurité des Européens sans eux.
Other European leaders, including Finnish President Alexander Stubb, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni and Czech Prime Minister Peter Fiala also stressed the need for clear security guarantees for Ukraine.
At least 7 people were killed and more than a dozen others were injured after Russia struck Kharkiv overnight into Monday. Ukrainian officials say the Kremlin fired a new barrage of missiles and drones targeting the northeastern city. Regional governor of Kharkiv, Oleksiy Neubov, says a 2-year-old boy was among those killed in the attack. 6 of those wounded were also children, ranging from 6 to 17 in age. Local officials say many victims are still trapped under the rubble, warning that figures may continue to rise. Kharkiv has been a target of Russia's intensified aerial assault. On Sunday, the city was struck with an array of drones and guided bombs, injuring several people. The adjacent Sumy region also came under Russian attack in the early hours of Monday. 2 people were injured and more than a dozen homes and an educational institution sustained damage. The Black Sea port city of Odessa has also been placed under monitoring after residents reported hearing explosions late on Sunday and into the early hours of Monday. The attacks come as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Washington for a crucial meeting with US President Donald Trump in the White House. Trump, just hours before he's due to welcome Zelensky, ruled out joining NATO and reclaiming Crimea as part of any potential peace deal with Russia. The meeting comes just days after Trump's Alaskan summit with Russia's President Vladimir Putin in a military base on Friday. Zelensky, making his first visit to the White House since late February's dramatic showdown, will be accompanied by a slew of European leaders, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
During a trip to Japan, Germany's foreign minister Johann Wadephul criticized China for its, quote, increasingly aggressive behavior in the Taiwan Strait and the East and South China Seas. China was quick to hit back at Germany, claiming its accusations incite confrontation. In his meeting with his Japanese counterpart, Wadephul also criticized Beijing for its support for Russia in its ongoing invasion of Ukraine.
Feste Sicherheitsgarantien sind dafür zentral, denn die Ukraine muss auch nach einem Waffenstillstand und Friedensschluss in der Lage sein, sich wirkungsvoll zu verteidigen.
The visit comes on the same day as a trip by German Chancellor to Washington for talks with US President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky on ending the war in Ukraine.
Deadly wildfires have so far burned through more than 3,400 kilometers of Spanish woodland, a record-setting figure for the country according to a European monitor. The fires have forced the evacuation of more than 30,000 people in the northern province of Galicia. Authorities are struggling to contain the fires. Madrid says 12 major wildfires are still ablaze as it awaits assistance from European countries. 2 Dutch water dumping planes and firefighters from other countries are expected to arrive in the coming days under a European cooperation agreement. The country's civil protection unit also added on Monday that Spain is set to receive the largest contingent of international aid in history to battle the flames. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says a further 500 troops will be deployed to Galicia in a bid to boost firefighting efforts. The deployment is on top of 1,400 troops already on wildfire duty. Portugal, which was also victim to the fires gripping the Iberian Peninsula, appears to have better days on its horizon. The country is expecting cooler weather in the coming days, in a much-needed respite after a string of severe wildfires, which have also stretched Lisbon's resources. On Sunday, more than 4,000 firefighters, 1,300 vehicles, and 17 planes were deployed to tackle the flames. The blazes have so far burnt an area close to 1,400 kilometers, around 17 times more than what it was in 2024.
The US envoy to Lebanon said Washington would seek an economic proposal for post-war reconstruction in the country, after Beirut endorsed a US-backed plan for Hezbollah to disarm. Tom Barrack also said his team would discuss the long-term stop to hostilities with Israel after months of diplomacy between Washington and Lebanon.
We need participation. It's always a step-by-step approach, but I think the Lebanese government has done their part. They've taken the first step. Now what we need is Israel to comply with that equal handshake.
Lebanon's decision last week to support a plan to disarm Hezbollah angered the Iran-backed group. They believe Israel's military should first withdraw from a part of southern Lebanon it has occupied since the end of the war last November. Hezbollah's Secretary General has vowed to fight efforts to disarm the group, sowing fears of civil unrest in the country.
Air Canada said it suspended plans to restart operations after the union representing 10,000 flight attendants defied a return-to-work order. The strike, announced on Friday, was already affecting about 130,000 travelers around the world per day during the peak summer travel season.
Well, we've been trying to get through on the phone to Air Canada to try and rebook our flights, been looking online, there's nothing available, we can't get through on the phone. And so I just decided to come down here to the airport to see if I could talk to an agent and get something booked.
I'm trying to get back home to London. Hopefully I'm going to get back, but we'll see, I guess.
Less than 12 hours after workers walked off the job, Canada's federal jobs minister ordered the flight attendants back to work. But union members say they will continue to refuse work until their demands are heard, calling the return-to-work order unconstitutional. Air Canada has been in contract talks with the union for about 8 months, but they have yet to reach a tentative deal. The Canadian government maintains it is not anti-union, saying it is clear the two sides are at an impasse. Bolivia's dark horse centrist candidate Rodrigo Paz secured a surprise lead in Sunday's presidential election, early results showed. With over 90% of the ballots counted, he received nearly 33% of the votes cast. In second place was right-wing former President Jorge Quiroga, who secured 26.4% of votes. The candidates are headed for a runoff, as 50% or 40% with a 10-point margin were needed for an outright victory. The results delivered a major blow to the Andean nation's movement towards socialism or MAS party after almost 20 years of dominance. The party's founder, charismatic ex-president Evo Morales, rose to power as part of the pink tide of leftist leaders that swept into office across Latin America during the commodities boom of the early 2000s. The elevation of the more moderate Paz apparently reflects Bolivian ambivalence about a wholesale political flip to a right-wing establishment. Paz has tried to distance himself from Morales' now shattered MAS party, which has failed to halt an economic tailspin.
To celebrate 70 years of being the world's largest music event, Eurovision Song Contest got a fresh new look, including new logos and a custom-made font. The original hand-drawn logo was redesigned into a single simplified design. The contest's iconic heart, however, remains at the center of the logo. It now incorporates 70 layers, one for each year of Eurovision. The brand new identity will be used across all platforms as Austria gears up to host the competition in 2026.
I love you.
A big reason that Dave and I wanted to do this film is that we knew that our shared history as a couple would be infused into the characters, and it certainly helped. You know, it actually made it so that we really didn't have to do a lot of prep work in terms of that relationship. I mean, our relationship is very different from the couple in the movie, but in terms of just having that history that an audience can feel, all of that stuff was already there.
And there are very intimate scenes in this movie. We are doing stuff in this movie that we've never done in real life. And so it would have been weird to do it with anyone that wasn't my wife.
During the shooting of this movie, we had sex for the first time.
We've
been together 13
breaking
years.
News, 13 and a half years.
Honor to witness.
Thank you. Thank you. It felt like a really special day.